Welcome to Digital Stratosphere, the podcast on all things technology agnostic. We offer insights and advice for anyone going through a digital transformation journey. Joining me today, we have Director of Digital Transformation and Strategy here at Third Stage, Adam Cheatham. Adam, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's nice to be back.
Absolutely. So this month we are talking about all trends of 2022 when it comes to your digital transformation. So today we are going to talk about integration and kind of unpack a basic definition of integration, and then also go into why it is a main trend that we're seeing in 2022. So Adam, can you start by giving us kind of a basic definition of integration and kind of the types of projects it involves?
Yeah, so an integration is a point between two software systems that don't share the same code. That's the easiest way of describing it. Where we run into integrations in software on the whole is when you have a good example at least, is when you have one software provider who supplies one software system that you need, and another software provider who provides a different system that you need. And when you need those two systems to talk to each other and share data and information, you do that through an integration. So an integration becomes an interface between those two systems that allows them to speak to each other and share data.
And are there different types of integration? You had mentioned data right there. Are there other types?
Yeah, well, there are all kinds of different types of integrations, yes, and they're all defined by what the method of integration is. But the way I think is most appropriate to think of an integration and the types of integrations that there are between the two things that you're integrating. So you may integrate two databases, and that's one different type of an integration than having two systems integrate, because two databases need to share the same exact fields in similar ways so that they can act more jointly as a single source of truth, and the data becomes just something that tells you a fact about something. It's a piece of data, a data element. Integrations between systems are a bit more active in that data flows between them, as opposed to being a point-to-point connection. You have more of an interwoven connection where more pieces of information are flowing through that integration, and they're typically going in both directions.
That makes sense. So is there certain industry types or business types that heavily rely on integrations over others?
I'd say that not particularly from a perspective of industry, but there are certain decisions that you can make along the way that will make you more oriented towards integrations or an integrated best of breed environment, or a single integrated environment within one system. So the overall goal of a digital transformation should be to have a system or subset of systems that accomplishes all of your business's needs within one environment. So we would like those that integration allows for that sharing of an environment. Whereas with a best of breed, you find that you end up with more software packages. And that's okay. Sometimes you have more needs in specific areas, and that has more to do with the complexities of each individual business than it does the size of the industry. So to kind of give you an idea of the way that it looks is you have different tiers of software. You have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 ERP systems. Tier 1 systems do just about everything under the sun. These are the Oracle ERP clouds, the SAP S/4HANAs, the Microsoft Dynamics Finance and Operations, or Supply Chain and Operations, as I believe they're calling it today. Those types of tier 1 systems, M4, M3 is often considered a tier 1 system as well, that are made to do everything. They're very large, they're very complex software systems that become very expensive and difficult to implement. So the largest and most complex businesses tend to end up in tier 1 systems, right? As you kind of start to get smaller as a business, as we move down the scale towards smaller business sizes, you have tier 2 systems that are kind of a medium-sized software. They're made to do most things, but allow for some decision making on the whole. That is, some tier 2 systems do things better than in certain functional areas than others. These are the NetSuites of the world. Epicor is a tier 2 system. Infor has some tier 2 systems. Cloud Suite Industrial, for example, is one of theirs. Microsoft Business Central. All of these smaller software systems that are a bit less complex in their nature and a little bit simpler to implement, but have less functionality. So if you find that you are a medium-sized business that has fairly vanilla needs, you're probably going to get away with everything out of the box in a tier 2 system for the most part. If you are the same size company, but you have a very unique set of needs in one particular functional area. I once had, for example, a client who had radioactive isotopes as part of their inventory, and tracking the half-lives of those was a difficult thing for them. That's the type of scenario where you have a complex need that is unique to a particular business that requires some type of additional conversation. With them, the question became, can we get away with a tier 2 system and some type of an add-on to manage that inventory, maybe an advanced warehousing system, something like that? Or do we go with a tier 1 system that provides more broad and comprehensive coverage? The first example being one that is going to require integrations with other products. The second being an example of the same scenario, same company that could end up in a single software system that is more complex and covers those needs more effectively. As you go down to tier 3 systems, you find more common that they focus in a particular area, whether it's finance or QuickBooks is a tier 3 system. They do finance. Fishbowl is a tier 3 warehousing system that just focuses on warehousing. Those types of activities that now you're a smaller company. Maybe you don't have advanced needs in any functional areas except maybe 1 or 2. So you find yourself piecing together your software systems, and every time you have one system and a second system that need to talk, you have an integration point. So that smaller company has the option to go best of breed and have a series of integrations, or go tier 2, which may be more expensive. It may be less expensive, but it's going to include a more comprehensive package. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a very comprehensive answer to my question. And I appreciate you kind of taking us through all of those tiers. We're going to get to best of breed in just a second. My last question, just kind of on a basic definition, is how do your clients prepare for an integration project? What are some basic infrastructures? If someone in our listener community is considering this option, what are some things they can do today to make sure that they're going to be successful?
That's a great question. And the first thing that you need to do today is understand what your needs are and where you're at with that. If you're thinking about a best in breed environment that has a series of integrations, know that those integrations need to be managed. That's one of and that's an active management thing. That's one of the disadvantages of a best in breed environment, in that it's a more actively managed thing. So as a business, knowing yourself and knowing where it is your needs are, so that you can balance the thought of taking on extra IT hours from a perspective of managing those integrations. That's an important part. The second part is to know what systems you're trying to replace, and how many of them you can replace, and just as importantly, which software systems are going to stay. No matter whether you buy a tier 1 system that does everything, or a tier 2 system or a tier 3 system that allows you to be more targeted in your functional areas, it's not common that one system replaces all existing systems. So some things that are going to need to stay in place, as you know what needs to stay in place, that should tell you how it is you need to be integrated. So that's the second thing that you need to understand is what stays and what goes, so you know where your integration points are. The third thing that I would suggest you start looking at is how clean is your data, and how good have you been about maintaining it and keeping it healthy. If you pass bad data in through an integration, you're going to scramble everything that happens within the system. All those workflows are going to be more or less worthless until your data flows through them accurately. So getting your data cleaned up and knowing where that's at is from a health perspective is another important piece. And then the last thing from an integration perspective of what a client who's considering this type of a path to do is just understand that integrations aren't a bad thing. They're just a thing. There aren't very many ERP software systems, for example, that do sales tax calculations, and there aren't very many ERP systems that do payroll calculations. It just is that way. So if you're thinking about upgrading software systems to something that doesn't do sales tax calculations, but your system does that today, you just added an integration point with a software like maybe an Avalara or something like that. And the same holds true for payroll and HR type of packages like ADP, for example.
Excellent. I think that makes a lot of sense to kind of back up and really identify what your needs are as an organization. And then potentially, move forward and understanding those really important integration points. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to get Adam's insight on why integrations seem to be kind of top of level conversations for digital transformations in 2022.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstageconsulting.com.
Welcome back to Digital Stratosphere, the podcast about all things technology agnostic. I am here with Adam Cheatham, Director of Strategy and Transformation here at Third Stage, and we are discussing some trends in the industry for 2022, and specifically today, integration. So Adam, it seems like we're seeing a shift in clients going from a more core ERP comprehensive system to actually looking at evaluating and a lot of times implementing a best of breed option. So can you just basically explain why that might be some shifting within our overall scope here as a digital transformation industry?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and I think that the first three things that come to mind for me are from a trending perspective that needs to be talked about. The first is the ways that integrations are managed, especially as the move towards the cloud is continues to grow, and software as a service platforms continue to grow. So integrations in those types of spaces is one important key factor to talk about, and I'll elaborate on that in a minute. The next is the maturity of the Frontline ERP packages. 10 years ago, the top three tier one systems were fairly mature in their space. And so all of the things that could be developed had mostly been developed over time. It takes time, the same way it takes time to fill a house, it takes time to fill a software package with functionality. And what we're doing in the industry these days is we're seeing the old SAP ECC6 has given way to SAP S/4HANA, which is has been in the market for I think it's about 8 years now, which is not very long for a software system, especially when you consider that sometimes SAP takes 5 years to implement, right? So the first person to implement on that may still have only been live for 3 years. Oracle is moving away from the Enterprise Business Suite platform towards ERP Cloud, and Microsoft is moving away from the Microsoft Dynamics AX platform of the old days to a Microsoft Dynamics 365 platform, and all of these are being moved to the cloud. Think of it as they're all moving into new houses, and now they're filling those new houses with things. Those things being functionality within these new software packages. So that's the second thing that's important to think about when we talk about integrations. And now I'm drawing a blank on what my third was going to be. So give me just a second. There's a platform as a service, the integrations themselves. Oh, and the third thing that that is driving a lot of that is as our clients find they have more specialized needs in one way or another, particularly as the e-commerce movement that has been inspired by COVID continues to roll. You find some clients that want a very specific, more niche system that might not be ERP. It might be an MES, manufacturing execution system, a CRM, an advanced warehousing system, and they want to just replace that piece of their business to get more digital, and that requires an integration. Right? So, on the first of those, should I keep going, or do you want to go through them one at a time and ask about them?
I was just going to ask kind of that there seems to be a call for flexibility within software. So you can continue on your answer there, or if you want to move on to the next question, you just let me know for your train of thought.
Can you talk to me about ask me about the different ways and ways that integrations are being presented, the integration options that are available in the marketplace today as the market shifts towards platforms as a service? Okay.
Are you ready to finish that last question?
Yes.
We can just cut it at your last one.
Yep.
That's really fascinating, Adam. And so what are the different types of integrations for, say, software as a service options?
Yeah. So in the past, when we have, the way of going to things was an on-premise set of servers that your IT department managed. Your IT department wrote the code that goes between that connects two systems. So they wrote the integrations themselves. You hear them referred to as APIs or anything like that. Where the general nature of it is, it's a custom coded translation between two systems, and that integration is something that continues to need to be managed, and that management of that integration is on your IT team because you built it and you maintain it. We're starting to see a shift towards is what's called an integration platform as a service. What this is a third-party provider who creates an integration between two well-known systems that provider then manages. So that service that they're providing you includes the integration between two systems. A good example of this is the integrations between NetSuite and Shopify. That's typically handled by a third-party provider. Often somebody called Celigo is a good example of one of those, where Celigo owns proprietary software services that translate between Shopify and NetSuite. So what happens with that is you buy NetSuite, you buy Shopify, and you buy the Celigo integration platform as a service, and you pay a monthly fee for that. And Celigo is responsible for now maintaining the connection between those two systems and making sure that they talk to each other appropriately. So as we see that shift towards the cloud and software as a service, we're also seeing a growth in the integration platforms as a service on the whole. So it has some benefits in that you don't have to manage that integration. It's always handled by somebody else. It can become pricey.
So knowing the connectivity of these systems are really pivotal, obviously, to be able to garner insights and actionable data. Do you think that this integration kind of multi-system infrastructure is a main theme that will continue for businesses? Or do you feel like we'll go back to more of an ERP not as complex system of all kinds of systems talking to each other after we say maybe over integrate our software systems?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'd say that both of those things are going to happen.
Yeah.
In my opinion, you're always going to have the needs of the more niche-based needs that drive a best of breed scenario, whether or not comprehensive functionality in one system is available. What that means is that there will always be businesses that have specialized needs and functions, where buying one smaller niche package to integrate with your existing ERP is a better business decision than buying a whole brand new ERP on the whole. Taking small bites is usually the best way to do this. As you start to grow as an organization, if your core ERP is working, but you have a new specialized need, maybe you've taken on a new business unit or a new line of business, a new product line or something like that, it may make more sense, and for a lot of companies, it always will, to add a smaller new system, and those integrations that come with it. So that piecemeal functionality in that third example I gave earlier, that leads to more of a piecing together of different functions, starts to become an option for some of those clients that haven't grown into the full-blown next tier of enterprise software. But on the flip side, the second example I gave of why integrations are trending right now, is just that those top tier systems, they're not comprehensive yet. They're about as comprehensive as they can be right now. But what happens is you have a software system that somebody builds, an SAP S/4HANA or Oracle ERP Cloud or something like that, and then that software package is launched. It's launched with fairly comprehensive functionality, but as it's implemented at new places, new code is written into it. I have a new client that needs this specific function out of this tier 1 ERP. So we're going to build that. And now that that's been built, that becomes code that's accessible and functionality that's accessible to new clients, right? So as I have clients that have new needs that haven't been built in the software, and I decide as an ERP provider to add that functionality to the software, the comprehensiveness of my software package grows. This is how the EBS is, the ECC6 is, the Dynamics AX packages got to become comprehensive. It's not like they were launched and then remained static for the 20 years that they were live and available. They continued to grow, as the systems of today will continue to do. SAP S/4HANA will continue to grow its functionality and continue to become more comprehensive. Same with Oracle ERP Cloud, same with Microsoft, Epicor, Infor, even down in the tier 2s. Those software packages will become more comprehensive. And as they do that, the need to integrate other tools with them to fill gaps will be reduced by the fact that those have been newly coded into those systems. So we'll see it kind of go in both directions, but from what I see in the marketplace, that's going to take some time. It takes decades to get to that full-fledged functionality, based on enough clients needing that one piece of functionality to make it worth pulling into the core flagship product.
Gotcha. And so I'm curious how software vendors feel about the sale maybe of a best of breed system versus a core ERP, and then the integration and the relationship to that. Can you give us some insight?
Yeah, so the software vendors are usually more worried about selling their own software, and if having an integrated product that's strong helps them do that, then they're usually willing to do it. It's when we release RFPs to software vendors, we coach our clients through the expectation that it's probably going to be more than one product that's suggested. There may be some add-ons in there that we'll continue to scope and keep an eye on, and determine what the level of need is on those. So as we see that space grow, I don't see it as those ERP providers seeing the third-party bolt-ons in the best of breed scenario as necessarily competitive in a negative way. A lot of times it helps them sell their software to folks that they wouldn't otherwise they didn't have the advantage of a third party partner that they can integrate with.
That makes a lot of sense. And I know, most of our conversation here has been about kind of the technical side of integration. I wondered, and just like stay with me here, if integration could kind of be somewhat of a metaphor for a company culture of collaboration, because I would assume that it takes additional kind of cross-cultural or cross-dynamic department communication to make sure that these integrations are being successful. Is that something that you kind of see with that?
Yeah, I'd say that you could apply that analogy to integrations for sure, because you got to know which system passes what data to another and how they interact to each other. And because they're usually different functions, it does involve two business units trying to figure out how to make those two systems play well together. I would say that is that collaborative need internally on that from a business perspective isn't isolated to the idea of integrations. I'd say that it should be you should be collaborating across business units as you think about process improvements that may reduce the need for integrations, as well as change management tactics that lead us to hopefully discover whether or not we need an integration or not. And those types of conversations that collaboratively help you make decisions, good, strong decisions as an organization. But when you're going to have two systems and you need to integrate the two of them, having both ends of those business units talk about the process holistically and how it is the 2 or 3 or 5 or however many integrated systems need to act. It's important to include all of the impacted stakeholders.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and providing some insight on this really interesting trend. You'll be talking more at Digital Stratosphere about some other business intelligence and some 2022 trends. Can you give us a little preview of some of the things you'll be speaking about?
Well, that's a fantastic question, and I can give you a little preview, but I'm not going to tell you too much. But we're going
A
to
teaser, if you will.
So we're talking a little bit about what technology means for your business. I think is the easiest way of putting it. I mean, we'll cover all of the topics that are important to that conversation and what is digital transformation, how do you become successful in it. We'll talk about integrations. We'll talk about the market as it pertains to the global nature of it, whether it's the difference between markets in the US, UK, Australia, and Africa, where we have offices in each of those locations, or some of the other differences in markets, and maybe Latin America and Asia as well. We'll also talk about what it means to have a best of breed scenario versus an ERP centric, single system scenario. So lots of really strong content. It is all complementary. Tons and tons of learning opportunities for our guests. So we're looking forward to having as many people as may benefit from it.
Awesome. And just a reminder for our audience, our 3-day Digital Stratosphere event, our virtual conference is coming up on February 8th through 10th. The link to register is in the podcast description here. You can also visit stratosphere2022.com to register. Adam and his colleagues will be giving keynotes and having some panel conversations as well throughout the event. So definitely a great opportunity to get some excellent insights. And again, as Adam said, it is completely free. So head over and register. Thank you so much again for listening today. Just as a reminder, we put out new episodes every Wednesday. Please subscribe to our channel and also visit our sister podcast, Ground Control, which is our longer form podcast, which releases new episodes every Wednesday. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next week.